Hey everyone, my name is Pavel Kotov, and in this video I would like to summarize previous tutorials and visual effects and combine all the tricks to create a final scene. Here we will create a fire effect and use several particle setups to create smoke and sparks. All of that plus some more tricks will give us a final result, a campfire. To understand how the fire works, we need some visual references. I have found these videos which represent the flame physics pretty well. If we look at it closely, we may notice that the fire isn't too consistent. On its top, we have a fast, turbulent flame, while on the bottom, the flame is more mild and slow. Also, we have a source of fire. For the campfire it will be branches and embers, and some of them noticeably flicker, so we need to animate it as well. So let's create a plan. First, we need some flickering embers. Then we have two types of flame, fast and turbulent one, and slow and mild on the bottom. Also, both types of fire give us two particle systems, so to say. They give us sparks and smoke. So today we will recreate all these effects and combine them all together in Verge 3D. As you can see, we have some sparks, then we have some smoke emanating from the flame, and we have two types of flame, the small, mild one and bigger, turbulent one. And of course, we also have animated flickering embers. So now, as we have our plane, let's start, and we will start with Embers and Ash. Here they are finished in a separated file. Here we have two objects with different materials. This one is the bottom one with ash and a little bit of embers, and on its top we have geometrical cubes, embers, with brighter material. Let's actually activate bloom, and here we go. The materials were done just by texture painting, animating the materials and using masks. As for the embers, I used a simple physics method. I have created a cube because it will be the simplest shape for physics, though you may create different shapes, but I recommend starting from the cube. It will be pretty close to real embers. Then we need to set rigid body physics for this cube. Let's leave the default settings for now. And then I just duplicate the cubes, rotate them a little bit, and give them random positions. Then we need to catch these cubes. For that, let's create a plane on the bottom. Then let's make it square plate shaped. Now let's set it to rigid body and passive, and press play. Now all the cubes are being collected into this plate. Though some cubes drop outside, so let's make the plates a bit bigger and also set its shape to mesh. Let's make some more adjustments until we are happy with the result. And here we go. That's how we create a pile of embers. Of course, right now there is not a lot of them, but we can always just copy everything that we have and duplicate them close. So we will have just the pile that we need. And when we are happy with our pile, we need to apply the transforms of the objects. For that, let's select them all, make sure that one cube is active, go to Object, and here select Rigid Body, apply transformation. Then we can delete rigid body physics. We will need to delete it only from one cube. Then select all other cubes and make sure that the cube with deleted rigid body is set to active. After that, let's just press Ctrl J. It will join all the cubes together without rigid body. Now we can delete our container and delete some cubes on the sides to make it look more natural. And here we go, we have a random pile of embers. We can actually play a little bit with some modifiers to get this final result. After that, we need to create glowing material and add a texture which will make them flicker. We will need this trick for both ash and embers objects. Let's start with ash. Here is its material. Now let's disconnect the emission strength mask and look at this mask separately. Here is the emission mask, and if we start animation, we will see that it flickers. This flickering is made by using the texture that we already know from previous tutorials, random clouds. But here, in this case, we don't actually move the texture, we rotate two textures against each other. One is being rotated clockwise and another counterclockwise. So they both go against each other and create this kind of interesting flickering effect. Here is how it looks like separated from the shader. And then I just need to use masks to implement them into the shader. Here I just multiply the emission mask with our flickering. So in the end we have this result of flickering embers. And the same of course I have used with embers themselves. Here is the part where I also use this clouds texture, but I only use one texture this time, and it goes directly into emission strength. Next, we need to create the flame, and the flame will be created from the cube. Let's add some subdivision surfaces to it, apply it, and then make a drop shape. For that, we will be using proportional editing with sharp setting. Next, we will need to UV unwrap it. For that, we need this loop cut through the whole flame. Now let's mark seam and unwrap. Here we need to combine both shapes into one. Also, we will need to delete doubles. For that, we need to go to Merge by Distance. Next, we will need to fill the whole UV map, so we will need to make this drop shape square. First, let's go to UV settings and set here constraint to image bounds. Now we just need to select vertices from both sides one by one and drag them to image borders. We will need only top and bottom borders. After that, we need to fix these stretched parts. The instrument Relax is perfect for it. After creating the UV map, we can work with materials, and I will time-lapse this work because we already know how to do it from previous tutorials. We will be using the same clouds texture. If we see some details where UV mapping doesn't look good, we can always fix it. It may look a bit mirrored, but after we add another texture, with another mapping, these parts will work much better. And again, just like in previous tutorials, we need to work a little bit with math to set up the contrast and brightness. Next, let's set emission color. We will be using alpha blends as transparency and shadow to none. Let's also set clamp and add some emission strength. Now, when we are happy with the main shape and material of our plane, we need to set the second small flame. We can do it just by copying the big one and scaling it down. As we have scaled this flame vertically, the texture will move much slower. Next, we will work with the shape of the bigger flame. Let's select topmost and lower vertices and press Ctrl+ to select neighboring vertices. We will just delete them. We will need this cylindrical shape for the animation. But before that, you may notice that we have rough, sharp edges. Flame doesn't look like this. So we need to add some effects to make these edges smooth. We already know about Fresnel effect from previous tutorial and we will add it also, but first, here we need to add smooth edges on top and bottom of both of our flames. To do that, we will create a mask using our UV coordinates. First, we will create a smooth bottom border. Then the border on top, and then we just need to multiply them together. Now we can tweak each of these borders separately. Alright, now we just need to multiply it with our main alpha setup. And here we have smooth borders. The next step will be to add Fresnel effect. If you are not familiar with this effect, please check the first tutorial about creating smoke, which you can find in Verge 3D Visual Effects playlist. Then we just need to again multiply our Fresnel effects to our main alpha setup. And now we have smooth borders everywhere we need them. Let's add some emission strength, work a little bit with our setup, until we are happy with how our flame looks. After that, we just need to animate the texture. As we have the same material on top and bottom flames, all the changes will be applied to both of these materials. And now we are ready to check how our flame works. And it works pretty nice already. We have a small, slow burning flame on bottom and more pronounced and turbulent flame on top. I also like to add some chaos into the flame flow. For that we need to go to UV map and just, well, create some chaos. We just need to move these vertices a little bit, and this randomness will make our flame even more interesting. And here we go. Overall the effect looks nice, but I would also like to add some color changes to the flame. On the bottom the flame is the brightest and closer to white color. Then it becomes yellow. Then closer to the top it becomes more orange and red. And on the very top we have some blue flickering. To create this effect we will need top to bottom gradient map. Let's grab an output and take this mask. And here we go. Here is our vertical gradient. Let's actually take the y-axis directly and place here a color ramp, so we can work with this mask individually. Let's add one more step to the map and then set the colors. First will be white, then let's add another and set it to yellow. The next one will be orange, and on the top we will have bluish color. And here we go, we used our gradient to create different colors. Now let's plug our results into the emission color. Alright, now we see these colors on the flame. Now let's work a little bit with this setup to get the perfect color distribution. And here we go, now the flame looks even better. Now our setup is almost done, we just need to work a little bit with different settings. Now we can make flame even more random. To do that, we just need to duplicate this shape on Shift D and rotate it by 90 degrees. So now we basically have two flame shapes in one. And also, let's scale one of them by Z-axis. We can also move it a little bit or scale it a little bit on UV map to make it even more random. Next, let's do the same with the flame on the bottom. We also duplicate it and work with the UV map of the second one. Now, to make the flame on top look even more turbulent, let's scale the top parts of one of the flames. Let's use also proportional editing for it. So the flame will be kind of flower shape. And also we can see that the parts of flame go in the center and to the sides. We can go even one step further and create moving flame. For that, we will need vertex animation of these meshes. We will create this animation using the modifiers and then bake it into the vertex animation. First, let's go to the 0 frame of the timeline. Next, we need to add an empty. And then we need to go to modifiers, apply our subdivision surface, and then add displace modifier. Here we need to select a new texture and go into the texture setup. Here we need to select our clouds again. this texture is very handy. Now back to modifier settings and let's set the strength to 0.1. Coordinates to object, and object will be our empty. Now, if we scale the empty, we can control the scale of the texture. Let's make strength even less pronounced. And if we move our empty on y-axis, we can see that the flame starts dancing. But it kinda dances from side to side. We want it to dance on a vertical axis. So let's rotate our empty by 90 degrees. And now, if we change its Z location, our flame will start dancing just the way we want it to. The white parts on the texture will expand our shape, and black parts will shrink it. So basically we have this texture globally affecting our flame, and when we scale our empty, we scale this texture, and we can see even more little details. Now let's just play with these settings to achieve the perfect setup. Alright, when we are happy with our display's settings, we need to think on how to loop this animation, because we don't want the flame to suddenly jump. The empty will be animated from 0 to 100 frames, and on this 100 frame step, we need to walk through the whole texture from bottom to the top. So let's take a note on how our shape looks in the frame 0. And to make it even easier for us to spot, let's recreate this shape just like this. It will help us to catch the same shape when we reach to the top of the texture, and the cycle will start again. Next, let's select our empty and set our first keyframe in a frame 0. Now let's go to 100 frame and move our empty until we reach the same shape of the flame. And here it is. So when the empty reaches to 0.2 meters on the axis, we have complete cycle of our texture displacement. Let's add second step, and here press V vector, so the movement will be linear. Alright, seems that we have a perfect cycle. Now let's delete our shape, we don't need it anymore. And here is our final results. We can see that the flame is moving. And we are done here. Now we just need to bake this animation into vertex animation. Again, we have already done it in previous tutorials, so let's time-lapse the whole process. And now we have working vertex animation. Let's actually check how it works and how it looks in Verge 3D. Interesting. It looks kind of like a ghost flame. What's going on here? The thing is, we need to enable bloom and HDR rendering, so the effect will work just like in Blender. So let's go back to Blender, select Use HDR Rendering, export it, And here in the puzzles we need to add the bloom puzzle from post-processing. Well, I have already added it. Let's re-export it, save the puzzles after adding the bloom, and reload the scene. And here we go, now everything is working. But we may notice some jump right here, as if our animation is not perfectly cycled. Let's check it in Blender, and for sure, we have a little jump between 100 and 0 frames. Let's select our flame and look at the keyframes. Here we can see that there is one more frame on 101 frame. And here, right in the frame 0, we have this weird jump. So let's select all the keyframes and move them left by 1 frame. Next, let's delete the first frame and check the last 100. Aha, the last frame also jumps a bit. Let's delete it as well. And now we will have the perfect loop. Now let's raise our emission strength a little bit so the bloom will start working, and re-export it to Verge 3D. And here we go, the flame is done. Everything is perfectly looped, we have bloom working, and the flame looks pretty random. Now we just need to set the environment, to add the floor, the branches, etc, etc. Just like I already did here. I just copy-pasted this flame that we just created into this scene and exported it to Verge 3D. Now here we go. Here we also have an animated light source to imitate the flickering of the flame and the light from the flame. Now all we need is to add smoke and sparks. First, we need to replace visuallogic.xml file with the file from our previous tutorials, the file with particles. Let's paste it and replace it. You can find these files on Verge 3D forums in tutorials section. Next, we need to create objects, which will become particles. We will start from sparks. Let's hide everything. And here are these objects. I have already made them. I made them from the plane, and they are just sparky shapes with very high emission material. They are called 1, 2, and 3, just like we know from previous tutorials, because we need these names for the main setup to work, and after exporting and reloading the scene, this is what we will get. Here are 1, 2, and 3 particle setups, and well, the sparks are here, but they are too big and too fast. Let's set them up using the control panel. Alright, now the sparks are working, but they come right from the center, and I want them to be a little bit more random, so they will spawn from different locations all around the flame. For that, first we need to snap them to some object, which will then be moving randomly. I have already created such object and empty and called it empty particles. And after re-exporting the scene, we need to go here and snap our particles to this object. Let's save and reload. Alright, the particles are being snapped to the empty. Now we need to animate the empty. We can do it in Blender or in puzzles. I will be using puzzles. For that, we will need the puzzle set position from Objects Puzzles. Here we need to select our object, empty particles, and now we need to generate random numbers. We already have randomness in the whole particles setup, so let's also use it here. Let's grab math operation puzzle and random fraction. Then we need to subtract 0.5 from random fraction. So the random fraction will be generated not from 0 to 1, but from minus 0.5 to plus 0.5. Then let's place it in the first field, set it to multiply, and then copy the whole setup. Here we will need these parts. Let's also delete random fraction and grab randomness variable. For this exact setup, multiplying it by 20 will work the best. And now let's place this whole structure into our X, Y and Z axis. Also, we need to turn offset on. Now if we press play, almost nothing will change. This is because one time is not enough. We need to constantly play this whole construction. So let's select timer and set it to 0.1. And now if we press play, we will notice that the particles start generating from different places. And that's exactly what we want. Well, we still have some artifacts, so let's reload the scene. And yeah, that's basically what we want. But without any constraints, this particle may just wander away from the fire, and we don't want them. We need to constantly bring them back to the center of the flame. Here we go, the particles traveled to the stones. So we need another timer, which will return them to the original position. So we will give these particles 1 second to travel around and then bring them back. So let's copy this setup and delete everything from the axis. Now we need the puzzle get position from Objects Puzzles, place it here, and as a target object we will use the flame itself, because if we look at the origin of the flame, it is almost in the center, and that will be a perfect target position. Actually, yeah, this is the object flame and here is its origin. So let's select it from this list and copy it to Y and Z location as well. Also, we will need to remove offset checkmark. Alright, let's press play, and we can see right away that the particles jumped into the flame. And here we go, works perfectly. Now the particles will never travel too far away. Alright, now we have set the particles, but how we work with smoke? This whole setup seems to be working only with 3 objects, and we already have them, objects 1, 2 and 3. Actually, this is not a problem, because we can always add some more. First, we need to create another set of particles. For that, let's go to Blender, and here I have already prepared them. Let's hide everything so it doesn't get in the way. So the objects are called 3 smoke, well 3s, 2 smoke and 1 smoke, with this postfix. And as you can see, we have exactly same smoke particles from previous tutorial. Now back to puzzles. We just need to duplicate this setup, then grab everything inside the procedure and place it here. The procedure itself can be deleted. Now we just need to tweak the second setup with new particles. Here we already have the particle variable, so we will need another one. Let's go to the procedure settings and add here another variable. We will call it smoke particle. Also, we will need new variables for the properties which will differ between the sparks and the smoke. So the first one will be smoke speed. The next will be smoke size. For now, this will be enough. We can actually create the whole new setup with new particles and new properties, but we don't need it here. We will just reuse other properties, such as randomness, size change, etc. Alright, now let's actually rename this whole setup. We need to change particle to smoke particle, speed to smoke speed, and size change to smoke size. Now we can also add new variables to the control panel here. Smoke size, smoke speed, and let's set them up. Now here, under the snapping options, we have empty particles and we can leave it at that, so the smoke will be snapped to the empty, which controls the sparks. But I have created another empty, which is called empty smoke. So let's set the target as empty smoke. Empty smoke is placed a little bit higher than a campfire, so the smoke will start somewhere from this position and will not just appear from the firewood. Alright, now we have some new spots here. Let's fill them with corresponding variables. Here we had clone object 1, so here we will need a clone object 1 smoke. Then smoke speed needs to be set to, well, smoke speed, and smoke size to smoke size. Also here as well we need to change scale to smoke size, because we are now working with smoke particles. And now let's repeat the same for other instances, 2 smoke and 3 smoke. Now let's also hide our new instances. So it will be 1 smoke, 2 smoke and 3 smoke. Alright, and we are almost done here. Let's see how everything works. Let's save and reload. Well, smoke size seems to be a bit wrong, so let's fix it. Alright, looks good. Everything seems to be working very well. Here, behind the scenes, I have secretly parented empty smoke to empty particles. So when the empty particles moves, empty smoke will move as well. So now the smoke also changes its initial location. So we have created a fully working campfire setup with different kinds of flame, smoke, sparks and glowing embers. Alright, that's all. See you in the next tutorial.